Howdy everybody. I pray you had a wonderful week. This resin and walnut bowl that I'm pouring now is not the actual bowl I'm going to turn. You might be able to notice that once I start turning it. I accidentally deleted the footage for the bowl I'm turning, and this footage was left in the folder. So I went ahead and put it at the beginning of this video anyway, because this bowl, when I took it out of the pressure pot, it had formed some cracks, and I'm assuming it's because the temperature of the resin ended up getting too hot, too fast, and there could have been some moisture in this particular blank. So I just left it in there because it is the gist on how I created the bowl I'm about to turn, and being I don't have the footage for that bowl, I felt that it would be more beneficial to just kind of give you an idea of how I poured this blank than nothing at all. So I apologize for that. A little bit discombobulated and disorganized this week, but it happens. Anyways, the colors I used for the bowl I'm turning is papaya, gold, and copper. All of those color powders can be found in the links to the description of the video. If you click on a little arrow underneath the video title, the description will pop up, and there will be all kinds of links for all the products I use, and they're either Amazon links or just whatever website that I acquired these things from. So to help you out, you don't have to buy the exact color powders I use. You can buy whatever color powders, but it kind of gives you an idea if you're not sure what these powders are, exactly what to look for. So hopefully that'll be helpful. I'd like to introduce you to my new four-legged kid, Missy. She is an American bully, and that's probably what you hear in the background right now as I'm speaking. She snorts like a pig. She snores so loud, but she is so adorable. She loves being at my feet, so I'm trying to keep her away from the lathe just because of the shavings. I don't want her breathing that stuff. I don't want her breathing the resin or eating it, God forbid. So I'm sorry for the distraction. This was her first time around me while I was turning. So she's, she just wants to be near me. She doesn't care what I'm doing and what kind of noise I'm making. So I apologize again for those distractions. So this bowl was casted in a larger bucket than what originally was shown in the beginning of the video. Like I said, this wasn't the casting of this particular piece. This is a piece of walnut, and I used an Easter bucket that I got on sale at Walmart. When they had their Easter sales, the 75% off their Easter stuff, I went in and grabbed 25 buckets. I know that seems extreme, but I go through these buckets quite a bit, especially if certain pieces get stuck in there, or if it gets extremely hot, the bucket will warp and you'll have to cut the bucket off of the piece. I don't like to have to do that, but sometimes you do. So buying them when they're really extremely cheap is definitely the way to go. Shaping this piece was a bit of a challenge for me this particular day. I was mentally and physically exhausted by the time I started this piece. So I kind of was like, well, I'm going to just get it rounded out and get something going on it, just start moving forwards with it. And, Missy was playing in a little kiddie pool with the kids, and she got all wet and nasty and everything. So it was kind of a good thing I had to go in and give her a bath, because it helped me to walk away from the project and just kind of rethink it the next morning with a fresh mind and decide on a shape. Sometimes we just have to walk away from things. And there she is. She's such a cutie pie. Her eyes are just so cute. I made her a little bed, but she'd rather chew on my wood scraps instead, so I guess if we're going to have any distractions, they might as well be as cute as Missy is. What a turd. She's so sweet. So as I was shear scraping, I realized, all right, well, I have this big old crack. And at this time I was like, I'm really feeling the shape, but I'll go, since I have to, set this resin, and it's going to take a little bit, I'll just continue on the next day and get a fresh look at it and, kind of start over with shaping it. So I didn't want to take too much away because I knew I wanted to change it. Before I cast this particular piece, I took the Fast Set Total Boat Fast Set. It's a 2-to-1. It takes about 45 minutes to set. It's 15 minutes till it's like gummy. And I went ahead and coated the whole piece because the first cast I did had a heat crack in it, and I was afraid maybe there was some moisture in the wood still or whatever. So I coated the whole blank that I was casting in the Fast Set and let that sit before I actually cast it. Plus the wood was very punky. The sapwood was anyway, so I was hoping that would help maybe absorb into the wood and help with that punkiness. Plus I left the bark on, so I wanted the bark to stay adhered to the wood, because even if you cast it all together, if the resin's just attached to the bark and the bark's not really good attached to the wood, then it's going to come apart. So as you can see, that piece that I had to fill there was where the bark had separated from the wood, and it just needed to be patched up. Anyways, I'm using my thin CA to help kind of stabilize, I guess, the real punky sapwood and the end grained. It was really, really bad. On the inside, the same thing happened too, and I'll show you what I did for that. I knew at this point that I wanted to go ahead and do a resin finish again on this particular piece. One, because the punky was just so punky, it was just tearing out. So I kind of needed something to be able to fill that with, on top of giving it a nice gloss finish. With that punky wood, there would have been differences, especially with resin. You can get it really, really shiny, but wood's only going to go so far. So I wanted a consistent look for this piece. I know a lot of pieces I've been doing lately are resin coated. I'm still trying to perfect this method. So I'm going to keep going at these pieces, or at least trying to perfect the method and using this resin as a finish over and over again, because I want to find out what I'm doing wrong, what works best, all of those things. So I apologize if it seems repetitive, but that's for my sake, that's for me to learn, and obviously to show you all the journey of that process. Sometimes you just have to keep doing it and changing different ways of how you go about it, to see what really works best. And I may have mentioned this before, but I'm the type of learner that I have to see it. You can tell me all day long your experience or what you did. I have to do it in order to really see for myself and for it to kind of just sink in. And I know there's a lot of those of you that learn that way, and it's just easier to retain. And for whatever reason, I don't know, it's just how we're all made up differently. But when I experience it, and I can say I've seen it or done it myself, it really helps me to remember either to repeat it or not to repeat it. So yeah, that's part of the process for me, and that's just how I learn. So I ordered a new Carter & Sons 5/8 bowl gouge. I really like my hurricane gouges, and they were just fine. Especially my first one, it would keep an edge. And I felt that it would keep an edge longer than my Sorby gouge that I had. And I ordered 2 more because I wanted to put 2 different grinds on them, and they're fairly inexpensive, and my experience with them was good. This last gouge that I purchased, it wasn't seeming like it was holding an edge, and I was getting very frustrated because I wasn't able to cut like I'm normally used to cutting. So I have the Carter & Sons 5/8 bowl gouge. A friend of mine on Instagram recommended it to me, and he said that it really holds an edge for a very long time. So I'm not going to reshape this bowl gouge until that edge is dull. I'm not going to resharpen the edge that it came on. It came with a fingernail grind, and the heel has been shaved off so you don't rub the wood and cause tool marks with your heel. So I'm not going to reshape it until it is dull. So I'm just going to keep using it until finally it's dull, just so I can get an idea of how long the edge that came from them, because they hand sharpen them before they send them to you, and they come sharp. So just a word of caution. And I'll let you know on how long it took to wear that edge down before I sharpened it. And you'll know because in my videos I'll have a Irish grind put on this bad baby soon enough. But it did really help in getting this bottom of this bowl. I do have a Hurricane that has a fingernail grind that I use to kind of bottom feed into the bowls. This particular piece, you can tell that it's really wobbling around on the lathe, and I'm thinking that overnight, because I turned it around, soaked it in CA glue, put some sanding sealer on it, and then turned it around, and I think overnight the wood may have moved. There's no evidence in that in the resin, but I'm thinking the wood may have moved, and so it's sitting on that mortise a little funky, and so it made it a challenge to hollow it out. And it didn't start doing this until as I started getting into it, so it could have moved as I was turning it. And I know that kind of sounds strange, but there's no other explanation that I can think of for the reason why it would be so wobbly this bad. I mean, you can tell by looking at it, it's flopping all over the place. And so that makes it a challenge to hollow, because there's spots that are just out of balance all over the place, and it doesn't want to cut properly. So here I'm showing you the punkiness of that sapwood and how bad that tear out I'm getting in it, and so why I decided to go ahead and do a resin finish. But first, I went ahead and mixed up the Total Boat fast set resin with acetone. I get asked so often, what's the ratio? If I'm trying to saturate something really good, I'll do a 1-to-1. So you mix the resin the way it's supposed to be mixed, and then you put that same amount of acetone in with the resin. It turns it very, very liquidy and loose, and you want that, especially if you're trying to saturate your piece, to get it soaked in there. Now, resin you can mix in plastic and things like that, but when you add acetone, make sure that you are mixing in a glass or metal can or jar, because acetone will eat plastic. This surprisingly only took about an hour or so for me to come back and sand it. I'm thinking because it was really warm outside, it caused the resin to really set up pretty quickly, and it really absorbed it in, because this was really punky. I mean, it was soaked in through and through. So I'm just sanding the front and back. I knew I was going to put a resin finish on it, so I only sanded to 400 grit. And just make sure you don't have really, really deep scratches, because if you have really deep scratches, I mean, the resin will adhere to it, but there's a possibility that you'll be able to see those deep scratches in your final finish. So 400 grit. I also put sanding sealer on because I knew this was very punky still, and it had pits. And what I was trying to do is eliminate those air bubbles from releasing when I put the resin on for a final finish, because what will happen is as the resin's sitting, regardless to how long it takes to cure, those resin's soaking into those little pockets, and the air bubbles are releasing and they're coming to the surface. Even though I use my heat gun, it will slowly release, and sometimes some take longer than the others, and then you have these like little air bubble-y things on your final piece. So that's why I started using the slow hardener instead of the fast, because it helps allow most of those bubbles to surface before the resin starts to get gummy and sticky and then cure with those bubbles stuck in there. I did have a few spots where, especially where the punky sapwood was, and I just took 400 grit sandpaper with my hand. I didn't do a drill, turn on the lathe. I just did 400 grit with my hand and sanded over those little spots, and then I ran a really nice thin coat back over it again. I did that off camera because I was coming out here periodically and checking on the piece, and I just, just working, and I didn't even bother to get the camera or even push record. It was one of those just get it done kind of thoughts. So I apologize for not showing that, but like I said, if you have those little spots, you can sometimes repair it. Sometimes if you have so many of them on there, and it happens, it's happened to me, I just sand it back 400 grit and then repeat the process. And usually the second coat will take care of any pits or holes or spots that may have not been so nice the first time. So the bottom, I don't have a spot on here to brand. It wouldn't have shown up on that really dark piece of bark that was in the bottom. So I decided just to go ahead and put my sticker in there and then pour fast set resin, use my torch to get rid of the air bubbles, and that was that. So thank you so much, Vinny, for trusting me with this project. It's a beautiful piece and beautiful colors. I really enjoyed making it and turning it, and it turned out beautiful. So I thank you all so much for watching. I pray you have a wonderful weekend. Take care and God bless.